The last time you filled up your gas tank, part of that money was already spoken for by a decision made in Tehran. You did not vote on it. Your government did not approve it. And almost nobody in the news explained it to you. Today we're going to follow the money from your wallet all the way back to the Strait of Hormuz and back. Because what is happening in the Persian Gulf right now is not just a geopolitical story, it is a personal finance story. Iran has built a toll system on one of the world's most critical waterways and set the price at $1 per barrel. $1 per barrel sounds modest until you multiply it by 20% of the entire world's daily oil supply. We are going to cover three things: how global oil pricing works, what Iran is extracting, and what it costs you directly. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly who is paying Iran's Bitcoin invoice, and the answer will surprise you. Let us start at your gas station, because that is the end of a supply chain that begins in the Persian Gulf. Every time global oil supply drops, refineries pay more for crude, and that cost gets passed directly to the pump price. It does not matter if your specific barrel of gas came from Texas, Canada, or the North Sea this particular week. Oil is priced on a single global market, meaning a shortage anywhere in the world raises the price absolutely everywhere simultaneously. Think of it like concert tickets on a resale platform. When supply drops anywhere, the whole market reprices instantly upward. This is why what happens in a narrow strait between Iran and Oman shows up at your local gas station within weeks. The Strait of Hormuz carries approximately 20% of the entire world's traded oil supply on any given day. That is roughly 17 million barrels of oil passing through a waterway that is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Before the current crisis, 138 ships transited that strait every single day without significant incident or delay. Since Iran began its chokehold operation, that number collapsed to single digits, less than 8 ships per day at the lowest point. We went from 17 million barrels per day flowing freely to roughly 1 million barrels getting through with full Iranian permission. That 16 million barrel daily shortfall does not disappear. It gets absorbed by the global market as a price increase across the board. Now here is where the story gets genuinely outrageous. Because Iran did not just block the strait, they monetized the blockade. Every tanker that Iran allows to pass through is now required to pay a formal toll of $1 per barrel of cargo. A standard, very large crude carrier holds approximately 2 million barrels, which means Iran collects $2 million per ship per transit. Payment must be made in Bitcoin within seconds of receiving the invoice, specifically to avoid U.S. Treasury Department sanctions enforcement. Iran is not the first actor to do this. Russia used the same deliberate delay and inspection model in the Black Sea in 2022. But Iran's version is more refined: a published rate card, a cryptocurrency payment system, and military enforcement built into every transaction. This is not a toll booth the way Panama or Suez charges fees. Those organizations provide actual navigational services in exchange for payment. Iran provides nothing except the promise not to sink your ship. And somehow this distinction is being debated in diplomatic language. Let us do the math on what this system is actually generating, because the numbers are staggering once you put them together clearly. Before the crisis, the Strait of Hormuz handled approximately 17 million barrels of oil per day in normal transit conditions. At $1 per barrel, Iran would collect $17 million every single day if full traffic were flowing and paying the toll. Over 1 month, that is approximately $500 million extracted from the global shipping industry through pure military intimidation. Over 1 year at full traffic flow, this toll system would generate roughly $6 billion annually for the Iranian government. That is more than Iran's entire annual oil export revenue in some previous years when Western sanctions were at their tightest point. And unlike oil revenue, this toll income arrives in Bitcoin, completely invisible to SWIFT, Treasury sanctions, and Western financial monitoring systems. Iran has essentially created a tax on global trade that bypasses every international financial enforcement mechanism simultaneously, and it is working. Now let us follow the money forward to understand exactly who actually pays this toll in the end, because it is not the shipping companies. When a shipping company pays Iran $2 million to transit one tanker, That cost gets added directly to the freight rate for that voyage. The oil company receiving the cargo pays the higher freight rate and adds that cost to the price of the crude oil it sells. The refinery buying that crude pays the higher price and passes the increase along to the wholesale gasoline distributors downstream. The wholesale distributor raises prices to the gas station, and the gas station raises the number on the sign you see every morning. Every single link in that chain adds a small markup, so by the time the toll reaches your gas tank, it is amplified significantly. The person who ultimately pays Iran's Bitcoin invoice is the American consumer standing at the pump holding a credit card on Tuesday morning. You are the end customer of a protection racket that was set up in a language you have never heard and paid in currency you do not use. But it does not stop at gasoline. Because oil is the base ingredient of an extraordinarily wide range of everyday products and materials. Fertilizer prices go up, which raises grain prices, which raises the cost of every food product that uses grain as an ingredient. Diesel prices go up, which raises the cost of every truck delivery, every Amazon shipment, every grocery store restocking run in America. Plastics, synthetic fabrics, pharmaceuticals, cleaning products, the petroleum derivatives in everyday life are too numerous to list completely here. A conservative estimate from shipping industry analysts suggests a prolonged Hormuz disruption adds 2 to 4% to broad consumer price indexes. For the average American household spending $60,000 per year, that is $1,200 to $2,400 in additional annual costs. That is money that comes directly out of savings, vacation budgets, and discretionary spending extracted by a toll system on the other side of the world. Now let us add the second layer of economic damage, which is the cost of the delay rather than just the cost of the toll itself. Approximately 1,000 ships carrying combined cargo worth hundreds of billions of dollars are currently anchored inside the Persian Gulf doing nothing. A modern supertanker costs between $40,000 and $80,000 per day just to operate while sitting at anchor going nowhere, with 1,000 ships sitting idle for over 40 days. The daily operating cost burn across the entire fleet is staggering in scale. The cargo aboard those ships, oil, grain, chemicals, metals, manufactured goods, was contracted and priced weeks before the crisis began. Buyers who paid for delivery that never arrived must now source replacement supply at current market rates, which are significantly higher today. Contract penalties, insurance claims, force majeure disputes, and legal costs will run into the billions across the global shipping industry. Every one of those costs eventually finds its way into the price of something you buy, because businesses do not absorb losses voluntarily. The shipping industry analyst group Drury estimated that war risk insurance premiums in the Gulf have spiked by over 300% since the crisis began. War risk insurance covers vessels operating in conflict zones, and every ship transiting Hormuz now triggers those elevated premium rates automatically. That insurance cost gets baked into freight rates, which get baked into cargo prices, which get baked into retail prices you pay at checkout. The total economic cost of this crisis is not the $1 per barrel Iran collects that is just the visible tip of a much larger iceberg. The real cost includes the delays, the insurance spikes, the supply rerouting, the contract penalties, and the global price ripples across dozens of markets. Now, let us address the argument that has been repeated consistently by the current administration in its public briefings and statements. The official line is that America only imports 8.5% of its oil from the Persian Gulf, so the exposure is limited. This statement is technically accurate and economically misleading at the same time, which makes it worth unpacking with some care. 8.5% of U.S. oil imports from the Gulf equals 246 million barrels per year, roughly 120 supertanker loads annually. But the more important number is the 20% of global supply that passes through the Strait and sets the global price floor for everyone. When that 20% is disrupted, the world's remaining 80% of supply must cover the gap. And that competition drives prices everywhere upward. American oil producers benefit from higher prices in the short term, but American consumers pay more at every point down the supply chain. The argument that low U.S. Gulf dependence protects American consumers from Hormuz disruption simply does not survive contact with basic commodity economics. Here is another number that deserves attention because it rarely appears in the coverage of this story despite its direct relevance. The Strait of Hormuz also carries approximately 20% of the world's traded liquefied natural gas, not just crude oil. Europe has been replacing Russian natural gas with LNG from Qatar and other Gulf suppliers since the Ukraine war began in 2022. A Hormuz disruption therefore hits European energy supplies at the exact point where they are most exposed and least able to absorb the impact. European energy costs feed directly into European manufacturing costs, which affect the price of European goods exported to American consumers. The supply chain interconnections mean that a Persian Gulf disruption touches American purchasing power through multiple pathways simultaneously, not just gasoline. There's also the question of what happens to the U.S. dollar's status as the global reserve currency in this environment. Iran collecting Bitcoin for Hormuz transit creates a precedent for major global commodity transactions bypassing dollar-denominated systems entirely. If oil transactions shift even partially away from dollar denomination, the structural benefit America derives from reserve currency status weakens over time. That benefit, effectively a subsidy that lets America run deficits and borrow cheaply, is worth trillions over multiple decades of operation. The Bitcoin toll booth is therefore not just an energy story, it is potentially a quiet attack on the foundations of American financial primacy. Now let us talk about what the ceasefire actually meant for the economics of this situation, because the market reaction was very revealing. When the ceasefire announcement hit on April 7th, oil prices dropped sharply. The market immediately priced in a return to normal supply. That price drop was worth billions of dollars in lower projected costs for importers, refiners, airlines, and manufacturers globally in real time. By afternoon of April 8th, when it became clear the ceasefire was not functioning, prices began quietly climbing back toward previous levels. This price swing tells you exactly how much economic value is locked up in the question of whether those ships are moving or not. Every single day, the Strait operates at 10% capacity instead of 100% capacity, costs the global economy real measurable money. The Shipping Industry Association BIMCO confirmed that some vessels may leave the Gulf without cargo just to escape the trapped situation. An empty supertanker sailing out of the Gulf is an extraordinary economic signal. It means the cost of staying exceeds the value of the cargo. That is how distorted the economic calculus has become inside the Persian Gulf after 40 days of Iranian chokehold operation. Here is the piece that almost no mainstream outlet has explained clearly, and it directly affects how you should think about this situation. Iran is not losing money from this blockade. They are making money on both sides of the transaction simultaneously and very deliberately. On one side, they collect Bitcoin tolls from every ship they allow through, generating revenue directly proportional to the traffic they permit. On the other side, their own tankers loaded at Karg Island are sailing out freely while everyone else sits anchored and waiting. Iran is selling its own oil into a market where they have artificially constrained supply, which means they receive elevated prices for their own exports. They are simultaneously collecting the toll and benefiting from the price spike that the toll causes a double revenue structure by design. No private business could construct a more efficient rent extraction model, control the supply, charge access fees, and sell your own product at the inflated price. This is the part that makes the Barbary pirate comparison not just historically interesting, but economically precise in a way that matters. The Barbary states operated the same dual-model extract tribute from passing ships while using those waters freely themselves for their own trade. The United States fought 2 wars to end that system because paying tribute always leads to demands for more tribute, never less. History documents this pattern. Precisely every nation that paid the Barbary tribute faced escalating demands within months of the first payment. If the current administration accepts any version of Iranian toll collection as part of a settlement, expect the rate to increase at negotiation time. The economic logic of tribute systems is identical to the economic logic of any monopoly: raise prices until resistance appears. Then raise them again. Let us now look at the long-term economic stakes. because this crisis has implications well beyond the current 40-day disruption period. If Iran successfully establishes the precedent that choke points can be monetized through military threat, the global shipping cost structure changes permanently. Every major choke point in the world, Malacca, Gibraltar, Suez, the Florida Channel, suddenly becomes a potential toll revenue opportunity for adjacent nations. Shipping companies would need to price permanent risk premiums into every route that passes through any contested or controllable strait globally. Those permanent risk premiums would be embedded in freight rates, which are embedded in the price of virtually everything traded internationally. An Oxford economics working paper estimated that sustained choke point fragmentation could add 1 to 2% to global consumer prices permanently. 1 to 2% sounds small until you apply it to the $70 trillion global economy and calculate the annual compounding cost. The global free trade system was built on the assumption that sea lanes are open and that shipping costs are predictable and reasonable. Remove that assumption, and the economic model that has delivered falling consumer prices for 4 decades begins to structurally reverse direction. Every American consumer, every small business importing components or materials, every exporter shipping goods abroad has a stake in this outcome. This is not an abstract foreign policy debate. It is a direct economic interest that touches household budgets across the United States. The 20,000 merchant mariners currently trapped in the Persian Gulf are a visible symbol of the broader economic paralysis underway. Each day, those ships sit still represents cargo that was ordered, paid for, and is not arriving at its destination on schedule. Manufacturing plants waiting for components will slow production. Retailers waiting for inventory will face shortages, and consumers will face higher prices. The compounding delay cost grows faster than most people realize. Supply chains are optimized for reliability, not for 40-day disruptions. Here is the bottom line on who pays Iran's Bitcoin invoice, stated as plainly as it is possible to state it. You do. Through your gas prices, your grocery bill, your heating costs, your Amazon deliveries, and your broader cost of living. The toll is denominated in Bitcoin, but ultimately collected in dollars, your dollars spread across millions of daily transactions in the U.S. economy. The solution is not complicated. Conceptually open the strait, enforce free passage, and remove the economic leverage Iran has constructed. The United States, the United Kingdom, and allied nations have the naval capability to guarantee free passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Every week, that capability sits unused while diplomatic negotiations continue. Iran collects Bitcoin and American consumers absorb the compounding economic damage. The Barbary Wars were ultimately economic decisions as much as military ones. Tribute cost more than the war required to end it. The same calculation applies today. The economic cost of allowing this to continue will exceed the cost of decisively ending it. Watch the oil price boards and the shipping rate indexes over the next 2 weeks. They will tell you how this is resolving in real time. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The economic ripple from this crisis will be showing up in data and prices before most people notice it.